Welcome to another episode of Week in One. We take a look at the week's top stories. I'm Slindile Xaba. Eskom and the Public Enterprises Minister are unable to say how much longer rolling blackouts will last. The power utility says it's working around the clock along with external engineers to find a solution. Eskom is blaming a multitude of issues for load shedding, including structural, financial and operational problems. Aldrin Sampia has more.
South Africans were promised next month would mark the end of load shedding. But now they go into April blindfolded.
We will come back to you in the next 10 to 14 days in a similar form and equally frankly tell you where do we stand on the particular challenges we have.
In short, South Africans are still in the dark about what is happening. Eskom is blaming a multitude of issues for load shedding, including structural, financial and operational problems. But its main concern is the lack of maintenance, which has had a ripple effect.
Any moving part is subject to wear and tear. This equipment has worn, has torn. There is no other answer either than fixing it. And fix it, you need to take it out of commission, and then you're gonna now reduce what is available.
The power utility has set aside 40 billion rand for maintenance, but it's evident that South Africans want electricity now. And all they are seeing and hearing is...
Because you are going to sleep in the dark and you stand up in the dark.
It is a crisis. It's a very bad crisis at the end of the day.
No one is noticing us that we are people of South Africa that is paying our taxes.
I'm one of the fortunate ones to have a generator, but it costs a fortune in diesel.
Eskom's diesel supply is also costing the cash-strapped entity a fortune. The power utility pays over 3 rand per kilowatt for power generated from diesel, while it resells a kilowatt at 89 cents.
They are talking about buying 20 million litres and 25 million litres. As we are talking now, there's no ship that is available. The one that will be coming is Wednesday or Thursday.
Hopefully this diesel supply will bring some relief, but there have been warnings that load shedding could be a reality for years to come. Aldrin Sampia, Johannesburg.
Local manufacturers for the retail industry and multinational companies say load shedding is having a catastrophic impact on their production. Not only are the power outages impacting on their existing contracts, but questions are also being raised about whether they'll invest in the future. John Bailey has the details.
One of the biggest manufacturers in Ga-Rankuwa, north of Pretoria. But there's nothing to produce at this company that runs a 24-hour operation.
As one of the larger employees, this is not sustainable any further. Further losses and downtime will inevitably result in job losses, and in the current economy and the current volatile climate, that's just not acceptable.
When load shedding hits, the machines are switched off, production stops, and staff are forced to down their tools. But these producers are expected to deliver to their clients in the retail industry and multinational companies.
It's catastrophic. It's difficult to meet targets when you're only when you're efficient only 50% of the time. As I said before, an inefficiency of 70% is detrimental. Absolutely detrimental to any business, not just ours.
While multinational companies and large retailers have agreements in place with Eskom to provide reliable power, this is not the case for most local producers. One economist says multinationals are likely to review their future investments.
These kind of big multinationals who invest and wants to set up global supply chains from South Africa, they don't want to hear stories about our supply is possibly going to be interrupted, and they need certainty. And at the moment, our electricity supply, which is obviously critical to this kind of exercise, is not looking certain at all.
Experts warn there's a real possibility that investment promises recently made to South Africa by multinational companies might already be lost due to the load shedding. John Bailey, Pretoria.
The contractors who built the Medupi and Kusile power stations must return the money they were paid. That's according to the National Union of Mine Workers, which accuses the builders of doing shoddy work. The NUM says if the ANC doesn't meet its demands over Eskom, it will hold a series of marches in the lead-up to the elections. Govan Whittles reports.
Why does South Africa face an electricity crisis despite building 2 massive power stations at a cost of over 300 billion rand?
The reality, though, is that the plants that were built have not come on stream fully, and the partial commercial availability of those plants has not been able to produce the required electricity.
Making matters worse is the shortfall of cash needed to service the ailing older power stations.
We must find the solutions as quickly as possible and find the time and the money to get the maintenance done that is required to be done.
Now the NUM has called on the government to recoup the money paid to contractors who built the Medupi and Kusile power stations for making a mess of things.
If they've made shoddy works that can supply the power in this country, they must just bring the money back. You don't rob anybody.
This money, the union says, could fund the maintenance needed to keep the lights on.
They must bring the money back, and Eskom will use those money and maintain this old power station and get the money.
Not put in place by business.
The NUM says it will march to the ANC's Luthuli House headquarters next week to make the same demands and secure a written agreement from the party. Govan Whittles, Johannesburg.
As if load shedding wasn't enough, some Joburg residents are now having to deal with water cuts as well. Joburg Water says it doesn't have the capacity to ensure water pumps can keep running during the electricity crisis. Zikona Chona sat down with a student from one of the affected areas.
Now, there's no load shedding, there's electricity, there's no water.
Thabang Matabo is a third-year sound engineering student living in Brixton in the west of Johannesburg. His area has been hit by a double whammy, load shedding and water cuts. He stays in a commune with 7 other people.
There's also hygiene, and then we crammed in the house. It's a lot of people, so you can imagine that. A lot of bad odors.
Matabo needs electricity for his studies.
There was times when I needed to do my homework, and then I needed to do some research online. And then in the middle of it, boom, there's no light. So it also takes away the Wi-Fi when there's no light, so I cannot do research anymore.
And buying water when there is none just isn't an option.
We don't expect this to happen, you know. We're not expecting this to happen. We had a budget. We have a budget as students.
Matabo says government needs to stop talking and come up with a solution.
We're tired of this. This should just come to an end, especially with electricity. Electricity, I don't know precisely. I don't know the details of what's happening, but they should find a solution quickly.
Joburg Water has warned residents to be prepared for the water cuts until load shedding ends, which could take months.
What we are saying is people must then monitor their load shedding schedule on either the City Power website or the Eskom website and make sure that they've got water enough to last them for the duration of the outage. Because as Joburg Water, we don't have enough tanks to supply the entire city. But we are working on a plan to make sure that we've got enough backup generators in most of the towers to make sure that we are able to pump the water from the reservoir into the tower. But again, we're going to need power.
This means Thabang and others like him will just have to make do for the foreseeable future. Zikona Chona, Johannesburg.
Rescue workers in Mozambique have been racing against the clock to find hundreds of stranded people after several cities were left flooded in the aftermath of Cyclone Idai. Details shortly.